welcome once again to Pop Pop Culture, the official podcast of Pop Pop Fizzle's YouTube channel. I'm Jeff.
I'm Heidi.
And we are back this week to talk about just kind of fandom in general. We wanted to do an episode where we focused on us and kind of how we got involved in this pop culture thing and some of the fandom side of things that we enjoy and that we've had interactions with and that kind of thing. Just so you get to know us a little bit better and why we do what we do and why we spend so much time working on a YouTube channel that very few people follow right now. but
it's growing by steps and many bounds.
Sure. I wasn't sure where you're going with that. Steps and mini wheats, steps and Fruit Loops. I don't know.
Okay.
We started our channel basically, for those of you that don't join us on YouTube, that are just listening to this, we started our channel basically because Heidi works a lot. She's got a strange schedule, so
always
third shift, late nights, all that. So
you basically need like a whiteboard and a lot of string to really kind of
and a degree in calculus to
figure
follow
out
her
my
schedule.
Yeah.
But what happens for us is that when we do have time to spend together, of course we've got a lot of family things going on, lots of kids things happening. So when she and I get alone time, pretty much what we do is we just chill and watch something, binge something on Netflix, go see a movie in the theater back when that was a thing. Remember those days?
Remember when?
And then we always talk, whether it's in the car on the way home or whether it's just sitting on the couch as we're watching the show, we break down our thoughts about the show. And we found ourselves doing it so much and watching so much YouTube wherein people were doing the same basic thing. And Heidi was like, we could film this. We could just do this in front of a camera.
Yeah, just put a camera on us and have us talk about the things that we like, dislike, break down stuff, kind of pull in, our own like backgrounds into like just discussing everything that we watch.
Sure. And that was the sort of inciting idea was, that we do this anyway. So just turn the camera on and whatever we watch, we'll talk about it. So we started real slow. We started with trailer reactions, giving our thoughts on those and whether we were excited to see them. And then it was like, well, we reacted to the trailer and then we went and saw the movie when it came out. So maybe we should do a review.
And we did those.
For it real quick. And so we had our own rating scale, and we still do. We just, of course, theaters are closed down right now.
And that's okay.
And that's okay. That's how things need to be right now. But we would rate things on a scale of a pop, a double pop, or a fizzle. A pop being, go out and see it if it's the kind of movie that you'll enjoy. It's worth seeing, definitely. But maybe you don't need to spend the big money on seeing it in the theater. A double pop was like rush out and see it now. Mm-hmm. And then a fizzle was, save your money.
I want to say that we rarely, if ever, gave fizzles. So, I mean, we recognize that so much work gets put into putting creativity up on screen. There are people behind the scenes that are doing their best. So we don't, even if we see something that's just not our speed, we try to find the good things in it.
Yeah. So unless a movie was just a cinematic wet fart, we would try to not give it a fizzle.
I believe there's another word for that, but that's okay.
but yeah, so we try to be generous but as far as the double pop, that one was a hard one to give out because something had to really blow us away for us to say, with our reputation on the line, whatever that is, to say, go out, drop what you're doing, go see this movie now. But surprisingly, there were quite a few things, we're big MCU fans, so mm-hmm. MCU movies, as long as they, weren't too out there. I mean, I can't think of too many MCU movies that for the visuals and the spectacle alone that we didn't say, was a double pop, but I could be misremembering that. I do that a lot.
I feel like there was a lot of stuff that, especially for MCU movies, I mean, there was just a lot worth seeing on a big screen. So there, we would put that disclaimer in there. It's like, if you really want to see these things, a big screen is a better thing for these things.
But I remember, I've gone to see movies that as I sat there in the theater, and because of your schedule, there were times when I had to go to movies by myself, which I don't mind doing, but it's not my favorite way to go see a movie. Mm-mm. And then I couldn't talk to you about it in case you wanted to see the movie later.
Nope.
But I remember going to see the movie Winchester which is it's a haunted house movie.
Oh,
basically.
yeah. You went to see that without me.
Yeah, and Helen Mirren's in it. Helen Mirren's fantastic, and everything. And I just remember spending most of that movie going, why is she in this movie? Like, why did this happen? How?
May as well call it Helen Mirren needed a paycheck.
Who had the blackmail photo or email that they suckered poor Helen? I can't talk. Poor dame. She's a dame, isn't she now?
I don't know. I guess I can look that up.
I know Judi Dench. She's a dame.
Of course,
she's a fine dame. Yeah, but I believe that Helen Mirren is anyway. Regardless, Helen Mirren was.
And then they dragged poor Helen Mirren into this.
Exactly. And it was just like, it was okay. It was an okay movie. But it was like, man, there were so many missed opportunities in this movie. And then it did nothing. I mean, it's in somebody's 99-cent pile at Walmart everywhere. And that, that's fine. That happens.
Well, I mean, it's got to be a thing, like filmmakers, like they put it out there, but you really have to consider, who are you putting it out there for? Like, who needed to see this movie?
Well, and I think one of the reasons that you and I are so generous sometimes with wanting to keep movies from earning that fizzle is that, like you said, so much work went into it. And sometimes a movie being bad isn't the fault of the people that worked on it. We have a running joke about some of the WB DCEU movies because there's so much interference from the WB side of things.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And we hear more and more about that interference all the time.
But my theory's true. It's got to be that there's somebody back up there, no names named because we can't do that and we don't really know who it is, but just like some dark office,
unknown studio head
somewhere pulling all the strings, making everything worse than it should have been.
Right. Somebody who thinks they know how to direct a film better than a director, or write a film better than a writer, who everybody's afraid of, and so they just do what he wants or she wants or whatever
they
the case
want.
may
It
be.
wants.
Sure, and I don't think that's unusual for Hollywood, but the WB seems to have...
It's so obvious with them.
Yeah, they seem to have a bigger problem with it than some other studios. But the thing is, even when we see those movies that are not so great, that are not so enjoyable, it's fun for us to talk about them.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
We grew up with stuff like MST3K, we listened to riff tracks and all those things, and there are enjoyable elements to bad movies. There always have been.
Yeah,
and
really enjoy that.
And some bad movies are... not intentionally bad, and there's something about them that's so genuine,
earnest
in their attempt to actually make something that, yes, you're laughing at it in a certain way, but you're also, it's kind of a good-hearted laughing at it because you get that they were trying something. It just went wrong in so many ways.
Bless their hearts, they tried.
The Room springs to mind. The Room is fantastic, and it's not fantastic in a way that you're just like making fun of the people involved in that movie.
No.
It's just clearly there was some vision, but what that vision was and how it translated through the mind of Tommy Wiseau and how it translated into a script and onto the screen and into the production itself. There's so many elements to that just make it a great movie to watch and laugh with.
Yeah.
And I think he's embraced that side of the movie.
Thankfully. I mean, it could have turned out really bad if he took all of the criticism to heart. But it's like, he tried. And the thing is, you can see everywhere where he tried, but it's just laughable, and it's fun laugh. It's not like pity or anything like that. It's just a lot of fun.
Sure. And so I grew up. I mean, Heidi's 7 years younger than I am, so she had a different kind of childhood. She grew up in a different era.
Yeah, I didn't even have cable until I was like 16. So there's that.
For me, growing up watching stuff like MST3K, it introduced me to a lot of bad movies that then after I saw their version of that movie with all the jokes, I watched that movie on its own. And it's so funny on its own that how could they not have written those jokes? Like they're great. Mm-hmm. And so I've gotten an appreciation for those bad movies just as they are. I mean, I've watched Manos Hands of Fate on its own.
I have not.
I own Manos Hands of Fate.
Thankfully, he hasn't made me watch that yet, but I'm sure that's
It'll
coming.
Happen.
It's
It'll
coming.
Happen. But yeah, so I have an appreciation for those things anyway, and so even a bad day, even on a bad day, or or even on even in a bad movie experience, I can usually find something
redeeming
good to pull out of it. And that really is why talking about those things with Heidi has become such a fun thing for me. Whether the camera's on or not, it's always been fun because, she has a different sense of humor than I do, but we play off of each other very well. We have a lot of the same sort of touchstones and inside jokes and things that we go to sometimes. That we quote things at each other all the time.
Kids don't have any idea what we're talking about.
Of course, and that makes it even funnier. And the number of times that, say, she and I quote Scott Pilgrim to each other.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Or Kung Pao to each other. Or any of those. So we have these little touchstones that we go to in our day-to-day, even when we're not talking about movies. So I've found that as our channel has moved into, on YouTube, we've moved into now television reactions.
Yeah.
So we've been reacting to Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which is in its final season.
Right, DC Stargirl, which is in its first.
Right, and then we just finished recording for, although we haven't aired them all yet, we just finished recording for BBC's Class, which is a Doctor Who spinoff.
And in its only season.
In its only season, right.
Series.
Series, yes. Got to get that British series thing. But, yeah, so, but I found that as we've turned kind of into that's kind of our way of watching shows together, is that we can't help but notice the ridiculousness in some of those things, but it's not that we don't like it. It's not that we don't like the show. And I think in the back of my head, there's always that fear.
That somebody thinks that we're, disparaging somehow.
Yeah, that if you're like a diehard DC Universe Stargirl fan, and we make a joke about how much a thing is like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, or I mentioned High School Musical, or whatever, that yes, I'm making fun of it a little, but I'm making fun of it in an endearing, in a way that it just endears it to me more. Like I'm associating it with things that make me smile is really what I'm doing. And so, yes, I'm ribbing it a little. Yes, I'm giving it a hard time, but I wouldn't keep watching it if I didn't enjoy watching
It's like a friend. If you're not really a friend, we're not going to take the time to make fun of you.
Sure. Heidi can tell you, my friends, we roast each other nonstop. And we love each other to death. But it's just, if you put us in a room, insults are going to be flying all over the place. And it's all meant in good fun.
Yeah. At work, I don't take the time to, make fun of somebody, Mary, without, unless I actually like them. Like,
we've literally had 3 episodes of this podcast, and you've called her out twice now.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if she's actually listening. But yeah, no, I mean, I wouldn't take the time. I wouldn't spend the energy trying to think of something funny to make somebody smile if I didn't care. So yeah, we may say things about these shows while we're watching them, but it's just because we're kind of giving it the old friend treatment.
Right. And so I always hope that comes across. But the reason we wanted to take a few minutes to talk about kind of our approach to all of this is because, this podcast is a new format for us. It's a new thing to attempt, and we hope that you kind of stick with us as we go through different topics and different things. But we thought we'd take this episode to talk about kind of where we stand in fandom and our approach to movies and films and TV and
any media,
and comics and everything. We're not going to go into every detail of all that today.
No.
But just we are hardcore nerds and were
before it was cool.
Yeah.
Way before it was cool.
Yeah,
Sorry.
so we're nerd hipsters.
Yeah.
No, I'm 47 years old. I've been reading comics since I was 11.
So now you know how old I am if anyone was listening to him before.
That's right. Well, and actually, so I moved when I was 11. But I believe that I was reading comics before then. I just didn't read them regularly. I had to wait. It was one of those things where I had to have been good. I had to have some currency, that I with mom and dad that I could call upon. Remember how I did this thing? Remember how I helped with this thing? I just want that one comic, and it's $1. And then I'd trade that investment of my time and energy for that comic.
I used to do that for McNuggets, actually.
Wow. I'm pretty sure comics and McNuggets are made from the same pulp
I
material.
think you're right. I
Pretty
think
sure.
you're right.
But yeah, so I would do that. And I remember being into comics before I moved. And then when I moved, it became harder in some ways and easier in other ways to get them because I had a corner store I could drive down to.
Drive?
My bike.
Oh,
Sorry.
yes. Ride your bike.
Yes. I'm old. I'm
you were driving?
Getting senile. Yes. No. I would. I would drive my 2-wheel vehicle down to
it could be the tractor. We don't know
the grocery store. And it was a little tiny grocery store. And I had to have the same conversation with the woman at the checkout every single time I bought a comic.
Oh.
Don't know her name. Couldn't tell you her name. She knew who I was because I lived right up the street. And the town was so small. Everybody knew when somebody new moved in. Ugh. That was a weird thing for me as a kid.
Can't even imagine.
But I would go in every single time. Now, comics were about 75 cents at that time. Some of them were $1. Most of them were 75 cents. And I would go in, and every single time I would go through the checkout with my crisp dollar bill to pay for that comic, I would hear, "Oh, look at this, a funny book. You know, back when I was a kid, they were 10 cents. And I was like, it's not a funny book. This is, the Mad Titan is coming to destroy us all. You don't understand.
It's not funny at all.
Right. But I would have that same conversation
every time,
and I would smile and be nice.
Of course.
And go, wow, 10 cents. That'd be great. Yeah. And then I'd ride my bike back up the street, uphill, by the way.
Both ways?
No, just back home. It was downhill to the store, uphill back home. And so I was in, I'm that hardcore of a nerd. Like I was, that was my literature. So, and I read books and stuff, but that was sort of the thing that gripped me, was that I could get invested so quickly in a comic, and then I have to wait. So that was kind of the first fandom thing, because as fans we get used to, if we're a fan of a movie, we wait 3 years or more for a sequel.
Right.
It feels like forever.
Right.
And we're counting the days and so as a kid I would just be anxious because they would get like 3 copies of the comic I wanted. So if I wasn't quick, I wasn't going to get it.
No.
And there was no other place for me to go.
No.
And so, yeah, I was hardcore even then. And then as I got older, by the time I was in high school, I had friends, Jason Webb, shout out to you, who was as into comics as I was. And he and I would sit around and talk about comics we'd read, comics that we wanted to read. Of course, this was right back around in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, right when we were hitting the comic boom. And, the guys left Marvel, the seven founders of Image Comics left Marvel to start Image Comics. And every Image #1 was going to be worth $1 million.
So they said.
Is what we thought. Of course, they printed 50 million copies of those things.
So not really worth $1 million now.
But I can remember, I had friends that even weren't, that weren't into comics that even wanted those #1s because it was a big
deal. Well, it's kind of like when the new Star Wars, the prequels came out, and everybody knew that the figures from the 70s were like, really rare, and they cost, trying to get one now, trying to sell one now is going to be and they made so many of them. I still have 300 of those figures at my mom's apartment in New York.
Oh, I sent away for the invisible or the ghost Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Oh, wow.
It's see-through, and I'm pretty sure that it's worth about $3.
Yeah.
Pretty sure.
I joined eBay back then to get these figures, and I paid for things on eBay.
eBay, that's like...
That's just where you
by MySpace. Right?
Yeah,
like
exactly. It's one of those ancient things that old people use. But I joined eBay way back in the day just to buy these figures, and my teenage self wrote checks to these people because PayPal didn't exist yet. So wrote checks to get these figures.
Checks, that's like paper Venmo, right?
Yeah, it's like paper Venmo, exactly, or paper Cash App.
Okay.
So, but I wrote checks just to get these first edition, like, mint figures, and, like, they're worthless right now, unfortunately.
Right.
So you can't sell a pack of 10 of them for $30.
But we, for the most part, I did not have friends that were as into the nerdy things as I was.
Same.
Now, I would have, like, a friend that was into Star Wars, or a couple of friends in Star Wars. I had, like, a friend that was into comics, and then some that were sort of into comics. And I had,
and that's
some friends that were into horror movies, and other friends that would never watch a horror movie. And so I had to be selective about who I did things with.
Well, and that's the thing. So it's even worse because female nerds were just not things back in the day at all.
Right, females are the worst.
They really are. But So my introduction into like, nerdy fandom, geeky sort of things was watching all the cartoons.
All these offensive words we're throwing around.
I know. I'm so offensive. I'm sorry.
All these labels.
All these labels, yeah. I used to watch everything on TV, like, so I didn't have cable, so I didn't have access to a lot of things, but like I was like there for after school cartoons and Saturday morning cartoons, and the ones that stick out the most for me, like as far as like the big DC and Marvel things, was X-Men on Saturday mornings.
Of course. Dun,
And
dun, 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 dun.
yeah. And then Batman,
The
series, the animated series was on at like I think 4:30 in the afternoon every day on Fox 5 in New York.
And Gargoyles.
Gargoyles was a big thing. And the thing is, I was a big fan of Star Wars. I watched some Star Trek because I think I could start catching some of the Next Generation stuff, like on like some of the non-cable channels. And then when I did get cable, I could watch a little bit more of it. Right. But like nobody that I knew was into it. Like I had one friend who was into Pokemon back then, and then another friend who just did not even understand what all this stuff was.
See, I was too old for Pokemon. When Pokemon hit, I said Pokemon because I'm Texan, but Pokemon. I was too old for Pokemon.
For that, they're Pokemon.
That they're Pokemon. But so I didn't really fall into that.
Same.
I was never the Yu-Gi-Oh, never the Pokemon,
Never.
Even Magic the Gathering.
So Magic the Gathering was a thing
like
when I was in high school. People would play it, and any off time that they had, they'd bring their decks with them everywhere, and I'd sit and watch the boys play, actually, like, because girls weren't playing.
Well, growing up in the Bible Belt, there were so many weird conspiracy theories about stuff like Magic the Gathering and Dungeons and Dragons that I didn't grow up around anybody that really played it. So I never really had any access to those things. And other than watching, I did watch the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon that used to come on Saturday mornings. I actually own that on DVD. I'm probably one of the 5 people in the country that own that DVD set. But
I have not seen that either, thankfully.
But yeah, so I did, I had a connection to it that way, but I never played the games. And honestly, for me as a kid, I mean, I watched so many things. I watched everything. That was Saturday mornings for me. It was just nonstop television because I didn't get to do that during the week.
Yeah.
And so I would watch everything, like the worst 80s cartoons, the worst 90s cartoons.
Watch them
of
all.
course, by 90s I was in high school and college, so I didn't have any time for that either then. But a lot of those bad 80s cartoons, where kids were turning into cars and everything. But and then they'd have stuff that was so great and so exciting at the time, and then I go back and try to watch it now because I feel nostalgic, and it's just like, oh my gosh, how did I sit through this?
Name one.
Well, I mean, like Silverhawks and so on. Like some of those may be okay to watch again. I haven't watched Silverhawks since I was a kid, but I mean, some of them back then I was super excited about, and then trying to go back and watch some like the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon or like old school Thundercats. Like Thundercats are cool. It's a cool concept, or whatever. But then you go back and watch those original cartoons or Masters of the Universe. Like my friend, shout out again, my friend Jason Webb's huge Masters of the Universe fan. And I went back and tried to watch an episode of that with my son, and it was like
so cheesy.
The way that Prince Adam talks, like he's got like 3 vocals going on at once. Like it sounds like he's yelling down into a well. Or I'm like, what is that? Like he's supposed to be a person. Why does his voice sound like that?
I don't know.
There's so many weird things.
Yeah, but I mean, like moving on from like cartoons and comics and that sort of thing. I watch things like X-Files.
I was going to say you're a big X-Files fan.
Huge X-Files fan. I mean, I watched V like when it came out, and I was probably too young for it at the time.
Right, the original
the
in
original
the 80s,
V, the original 80s V. I watched that then. I was just thinking, like, even then, I thought it was so cool, and like I watched
Robert England.
Yeah.
A.K.A. Freddy Krueger, a big part of that original
miniseries. I'm just like kind of reaching back, trying to remember because I was so young watching that. Alien Nation, now I think we just watched a thing where you said you actually never watched that. And I think I watched some episodes of it and I was interested, but like I never quite could catch it when it was on. I don't remember why that was. But like anything that was like, otherworldly or science fiction-y and that sort of thing, like science fiction-y, real word.
Right.
I would just
coining new terms all the time.
All the time. I would gravitate to those things, and like my friends just did not understand. Like they didn't even try, and I was like, okay, these are the cool things that I think are cool, and nobody else does. So that was kind of like me growing up.
And I still have those moments, as much as like superhero movies have kind of come into the mainstream and things like that. There are still times when I'm into something, excited about some corner of fandom, and I share it with people, and they're just like, no.
What?
I don't get that.
What?
Why is that? But there's plenty of stuff in mainstream that I don't get.
Oh yeah, for sure. And that's the thing. Like we talk about these things, and then like we could not name you like more than like between the two of us more than 3 Cowboys players, like football players.
Right.
You know,
because we're just not into sports.
We're just not into sports, and so like people could see us looking at a football game, going, "How do you not know who that person is?" And
but
it's
I mean, the majority of my friends love the movie Napoleon Dynamite, and I've watched it once, and that was more than enough for me.
We watched it together, and I feel like we shut it off halfway.
I did not find it funny. I found it annoying.
And I've read places where people have said, you know, I watched it and hated it, and then I watched it again, and I started liking it, and I'm like, I really don't want to take that chance. That's like an hour and a half of time I'm never going to get back.
Right.
So, no thanks.
But the thing is, for me, when I like a movie, I'm all in. And I know you're not quite as all in as I am. Because I'm the guy that watches all the commentaries and all the behind-the-scenes stuff, and I want to. If they've had a round table at some convention somewhere, I watch that on YouTube.
That's like just interesting. It is interesting, but like I don't always have to see those things or hear those things to really get my enjoyment out of a movie. Like if I enjoyed a movie, I enjoyed a movie, and that's okay. Like it's not gonna make me like it more.
Has there ever been a movie that you saw like the first time and just because, you know, you mentioned that kind of as far as the Napoleon Dynamite thing. Has there ever been a movie that you saw the first time, saw maybe bits and pieces of it, or watched it like with a group of people and you just didn't get why everybody was enjoying it so much? And then maybe a year or two down the road, you saw it again and you were just like, man, how did I miss how great this was?
No.
Really?
Yeah, really. I can't think of one. I can also be, you know, people will be aghast at all the things that I haven't seen also. Like
we've talked about this on our YouTube channel. You have a real propensity for watching the second of a trilogy or the third of a trilogy. I'll catch a second
or a third thing in a set of movies before seeing the first one. That's one thing that I have a bad habit of doing. I'm not sure how that's just become my thing. But there are other movies like, you know, like all the 80s like teen movies like the 16 Candles and Pretty in Pink and Breakfast Club. I've seen bits and pieces of. I don't think I've ever seen the whole thing. Right. And so there's a lot of those movies that I'm just
Weird
like
Science.
Yeah, I saw Weird Science, but went closer to when it came out, so it's been a long time since I've seen it.
If you saw it when it came out, you were way too young to be seeing it.
I was way too young to. There were a lot. I saw Goodfellas when it came out, and I was entirely too young for that.
I've never seen Goodfellas.
Yeah, no, I was entirely too. I think that came out in like 89 or 90, and I was entirely too young to go see it in a theater, and I did. So, I mean, but yeah, there's a lot of movies that people think are like totally classic. So, like, my best friend, who I love her to death and pieces and just wonderful person, but not at all understanding of any sci-fi, nerdy, geeky sort of things.
I heard you wish she was dead and in pieces. That's what I heard.
That is not what I said. Oh my gosh. No. I love my best friend. But yeah, so one day she decided to like sit me down and make me watch one of those 80s movies, and she made me watch the Goonies. And like, I know a lot of people have a lot of affection for it. It's like nostalgic, and it's one of those things that they saw when they were a kid and they thought it was awesome. But it really doesn't stand the test of time. And I watched it and I'm like, I'm never getting that time back in my life. And I didn't really enjoy it.
Well, it's got young Thanos. It's got young Samwise Gamgee.
I know. It's, like I said, a lot of people have a lot of affection for it, and a lot of that is because of nostalgia. As an adult, seeing it for the first time, I thought it was dumb. I'm sorry.
I have some affection for it. It's not up there for me, though. Yeah. It's not up there with, like...
Sorry, people.
Karate Kid and Back to the Future and some of those things.
I just saw Back to the Future for the first time, like, recently. We actually had a viewing party with our kids watching all the Back to the Futures, and I had never seen Back to the Future, the first one, all the way through, like, until, like, in the last 6 months.
It is a perfect movie.
It is a good movie.
It is a perfect movie.
It is a good movie.
It's one of those movies that if somebody tries to remake it, I'll fight them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll throw things. I'll tear down statues. I'll do whatever I have to do. But don't remake. Now, and I think the same thing about Princess Bride, and you've heard they're remaking Princess Bride.
I've heard that, and I'm not,
What is it, Quibbly?
I don't...
Quibbly? Whatever that channel is, whatever that app is.
Oh, I don't even know.
And it's supposed to be Sophie Turner and her husband, Joe Jonas.
Okay.
They're supposed to be starring in it.
So
I can't imagine a worse thing.
That is yet another thing that people have great affection for. We'll quote many, 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 many times.
It is highly quotable.
It is highly quotable. I did not see it until I was older, and like I liked it, but I don't see like the big fuss. Sorry.
So you didn't see it when it was new.
I did not see it when it was new. No. No, not new.
Yes. No, Scott Pilgrim and Kung Pao, I think, are two that we quote very often. Monty Python we quote a lot.
Oh, quite a bit.
Both movies, television shows.
So yes, yet another point about me being nerdy, geeky, or whatever. I was introduced to Monty Python and the Holy Grail like when I was about 14 or 15 years old.
Okay.
And I actually went home every day after school in 10th grade and watched it on my really old VHS tape.
Yeah, so you've probably seen it more than I have. I've seen it a lot.
At least 100 times.
Okay, I've seen it a lot. I don't think I've seen it 100 times.
It got to the point where, like, if I was bored in class, I'd start writing out the script.
Now, I have seen it on the big screen.
Oh, sad face. I want to see it on the big screen.
I couldn't tell you the year. I want to say it's probably 92 or 93, somewhere in Louisville, Kentucky, when I was in college.
It strikes me as one of those...
I got drugged to an evening showing of... Drugged. No, I probably was drugged, honestly. It was very late. I was very tired. No, we went to see it at a screening, and it was one of those where they normally show like the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Yeah, I was going to say,
so
this
they
seems
expected you to talk and
participate.
to participate.
Oh my
and
gosh,
so that's
that
what we
been so
did.
much fun.
We hollered out all the dialogue.
That would have been so much fun.
It was a lot of fun. That was why I brought up whether you'd seen a movie that you kind of came to love later. I remember seeing Monty Python and the Holy Grail once, I think, before. I think my friend Sheila Taubert had me watch it at some point, and I didn't quite get it.
Yeah.
And then I saw it again in like a bigger group of people, and I think I was, paying more attention to the movie because we were all kind of there to watch the movie, so I just kind of paid attention. And I didn't even make it through the credits before I loved it. I mean, just the opening credits.
And that's the thing, 10th grade, because it was funny, our 10th grade history class was European history, so our teacher, who was also a football coach, actually borrowed my copy to show the class, and literally nobody got it. Shout out to Mr. Indovino. I really appreciate your...
Got a lot of shout-outs in this episode.
Yeah, but, we have to think about all
that's
the
what happens when you reminisce.
A little bit, but it also kind of helps you kind of put together, background and stuff of all the people who've kind of like nudged your way towards the sci-fi geeky sort of thing. So,
Sure.
Shout out to him for trying to get more kids interested in really classic British comedy.
By the time you roll around to the mid to late 90s, which was just before you and I met.
Yes. There were the influx of the comic book movies.
Well, yeah, we started to get the X-Men, we started to get Spider-Man, that kind of thing. And I remember working with guys that were desperate as I was, as desperate as I was, to go and see X-Men when it first came out. And we were super excited for Spider-Man. And then I was working in the travel industry at the time. And when 9/11 happened, we were, it was such a devastating time. And we had been looking, I remember, because we've been looking forward to Spider-Man coming. And Spider-Man had the Twin Towers in its trailer.
Yeah.
And immediately had to retract that trailer and and do all that. And I understood it. But, man, it was just like, in that moment, that sort of dark moment, it was hard to imagine that we would go and enjoy that movie. Because...
Yeah.
That was kind of everything on our mind was real world stuff. But comic movies continued to thrive.
They did.
Nerd stuff on television continued. And I say nerd stuff, but I mean, you always were kind of drawn to... Now, you mentioned Star Trek. I watched Star Trek quite a bit. And I remember when The Next Generation came out, it was a big deal because it was not on CBS like the original Star Trek.
I'm trying to remember what network it was on.
It wasn't really on a network. It was lost my term. Not franchise, syndicated. Thank you. It was the first time a major property like that was going syndicated first.
Yeah.
There were other big syndicated shows happening. I know you were a fan of Xena and Hercules.
Oh my gosh, yes, huge fan.
Those were syndicated shows.
Yeah, thank you for reminding me. I was that geeky then too.
Right.
Yes.
But those were syndicated shows. But I remember it was a big thing because Star Trek was such a big property.
Yeah.
And they come back with the movies, and the movies were successful. So launching The Next Generation as a syndicated thing was a weird move.
Yeah.
And it really worked.
It did really for them, yeah.
So yeah, I watched all the Star Treks. I watched Deep Space Nine. I watched Voyager.
I've heard that Deep Space Nine is one of the better spin-offs, and I have not seen it. I have not seen Voyager either.
It's definitely very different.
That's what I've heard.
Voyager is a weird kind of hybrid of different Star Trek elements.
Okay.
But it takes a while to find its footing, and even then still has some wacky episodes that don't seem to really fit.
Wacky. We love
but
wacky
it was a lot
things.
of fun. And to be honest, at the time, as a very young individual, I would have watched just for 7 of 9. So Voyager kept me on lock the whole ride through. Deep Space Nine was much more political and philosophical and had some religious undertones.
Perhaps I would have enjoyed that.
All kinds of, it's your kind of thing.
Yeah, I really enjoyed like Caprica, and I know a lot of people didn't, but it was so enjoyable for me
We were
because
both big fans of Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah.
Now I had watched the original Battlestar Galactica as a kid,
but I can imagine that I would have enjoyed it.
So I was really excited about the remake. Not really excited they're going to remake it again.
They are?
Yeah, that's the word. I'm not sure how far into that they're going.
No, okay. You know what? I would give it a shot just to see what they would do with it and if they could carry it well.
But the big thing for us, aside from X-Files and those kinds of things, which I was into as well, was Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Buffy the Vampire Slayer was a big thing for me as a viewer and as a geek because there were so many elements to it that hit all the right bells and whistles for me.
All the right notes.
Right. And it was just like, man, I've never seen a show quite like this. By the time we got to Angel, the spinoff, I was all the way in.
It's called Angel the series.
No, I know.
That's what the S did not stand for spinoff.
But some people may be listening that don't understand that Angel was a spinoff.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so by the time we got to that, I mean, I was all in. And that was really my first time of being fully a part of a fandom. Now, when you talk comics, I was a part of a comic fandom to the extent that I would read all the magazines. I would go to my comic shop. Now, where I lived as a kid, I couldn't go to a comic shop, so I was kind of removed from that.
Yeah.
But I would talk to my friends about comics and read the magazines and know what was getting ready to come out. And I'd order things in advance from companies and get them sent to me. And so I was really in, but I didn't have a lot of interaction with other fans in other places.
So same for me. So I was a big fan of Star Wars. Actually did not become a real fan until the prequels came out. And then I went back and watched the original series and the original trilogy and loved them too. And I got the Star Wars Insider magazine. I was a regular subscriber to that for years. So that was kind of my biggest indulgence in fandom. Now, I was a big fan of Gargoyles as well, and I kind of caught some fan fiction bug off of that and was reading a lot of that as well. But that still wasn't really participatory, not really.
I really didn't know what fan fiction was until I became a fan of Buffy the Vampire Slayer and started reading some. People would share on communities and things, fan fiction, and so I had always had the writing bug. I'd always written things, mainly lyrics and poetry and that kind of thing. Had lots of story ideas, but had never committed any of them to paper mainly because I thought I couldn't. I didn't think I had that in me.
Huh.
And something about fan fiction was like a license to try because I knew those characters really well because I could see them. I watched them on TV every week. And I could see them in my head and hear their voices in my head, the way the actors played those characters. So it was easy for me to imagine a what if and just let that play out in my head.
Yeah.
And then after I had some experience writing fan fiction, that was when I decided, well, maybe I could write something of my own. And I would start with short things.
Yeah.
But I did. I wrote a lot of Buffy the Vampire Slayer fan fiction back in the day.
You wrote quite a bit of it.
And it really was, I'm never going to sort of poo-poo anybody's fan fiction thing because it's a great place to get started if you need to build your confidence because you get feedback, you get people reading your stuff, and like I said, you're not investing your own characters into something that'll pass or fail kind of thing. It doesn't feel like that much pressure because either people are going to like it or they're not. And
yeah,
you can go back to it and edit it and repost it and do whatever.
And it's a lot of shorthand too, because the people who are reading this know the characters too. Yeah.
Right, and they understand the world, and yeah. So there's a lot of shorthand going on there, and so for me that was the first time that I really felt like a part of a fandom that was very specific. And that was how I met you.
Yeah.
We were both part of the same community online. First time I'd ever been a part of any kind of online community.
Same.
And we began to talk about the show and about other things, and presto changeo, here we are, all these years later.
Yep.
And since then, other things we've been, our fandom has continued to the point where over the last, now we haven't been able to, of course, this year because of COVID, and then. Last year we were planning a big move, not knowing it wasn't going to happen.
Yep.
So we didn't get to last year either. But in years past, we've been known to visit the conventions.
At least the ones that are, quote
relatively
unquote,
close.
Local, sort of local to us. I think,
if local is 4 hours away.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is Texas. After all, we are based in Texas. And, people of a different persuasion will drive 3 hours for a high school football game. So why wouldn't we drive 3 hours?
When you say a different persuasion, okay, I'm not going to say that. No, that'll get me in trouble.
Well, I'm just saying, people who are just big football fans, they will make that drive. So
right.
We are big, like nerdy sort of comic booky sort of
we are
thing. So we own it.
We
make that drive.
That's right.
So it's not unusual
to be loved by anyone.
Yes.
No, we decided. I had always wanted to go to a comic convention. I had friends that went to a comic convention and got some stuff signed by Stan Lee back when you didn't have to pay to get things signed.
So, yeah, I went to my first one when I was 22. 22. It was in 22 years old, back in Baltimore, and I was aghast that there was an actor who was asking for money for signatures at the time.
How much at the time?
I want to say that he's somewhere between $10 and $20.
Okay.
Which is, in these days, not that bad.
No.
But, I got a picture with Anthony Stewart Head.
You did. That's right.
For free.
That's right.
With my own, or somebody's camera. I don't remember whose camera it was. I don't think it was my own. And then Andy Hallett as well, R.I.P. It was great. It was a great little, it was a little convention.
From the Buffy and Angel universe, by the way.
Yes, he was the singer? The
Lauren.
host. Lauren. And he was wonderful. And it was my very first exposure to convention scene. But I think back then, so it was 2002.
Now, how big a convention was that?
I don't think it was that big. It was very fan and community organized and oriented. So it was not huge.
So it was all Buffy, or was it different things?
It was different things, but the three people that I met were all Buffy/Angel people.
Gotcha.
So I want to say that there was, we also saw a common rotation, which was the band that Warren, I can't remember the guy's name.
Right, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. But he was in Buffy season 6, so we saw his band at the time. So I feel like it was a lot of Buffy and Angel stuff, but also
Adam something, right?
Adam.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't remember. But yeah, there was a lot of Buffy Angel stuff, but I feel like there's other stuff that I just didn't go to because it wasn't stuff I was familiar with.
Right.
So it was awesome.
Yeah, so I never got to go to a con for a long time until you decided to work in one.
Yeah. Yep.
And that was kind of my first experience in one. You worked how many days?
I worked, so the con went on for, I feel like there was a preview like a Thursday night, and then it went all the way through Sunday afternoon. Right. So it was like Thursday through Sunday, and I worked like 2 of those days, and I think we went on the Saturday.
Right. Well, I went one day, and then we took the kids.
Oh yeah, that's right. So
I went 2 days, and so I kind of knew that my day by myself, because you were working the day that I was there.
Yeah.
You took off the day that we were taking the kids.
Right.
But the day that I was going to be there, I needed to get a bunch of stuff done because I knew that dragging the kids around was not going to be conducive to being in lines for signatures or anything like that. And so we went. Now, by this point, we had become big fans of Doctor Who.
Yep.
We had binged and watched everything to get caught up to Doctor Who and so that particular con had several people there. Now, had we done Houston before that?
Yes.
Okay, so that's what I thought. So we had gone to a con in Houston that because there were 4 doctors there.
Yes, there were 4 doctors at that one.
4 doctors there.
It was 5, 6, 7, 8.
That's right. And then Captain Jack.
And then Captain Jack. So yeah, all of them.
That's right. So there were 5 people. And then I was excited because as a fan of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., we knew Clark Gregg was going to be there.
Yes.
I think Ming Na was there as well.
Yeah.
And then
Elizabeth Henstridge was there.
Elizabeth Henstridge was there. And so I thought, well, I'm going to get in, and maybe the guy who plays Ward, too, whose name escapes me right now.
Yeah,
he
Ward
was there as well. So I was like, well, I've got to get in to get who I can. I knew I wanted Coulson.
Yes.
And so I bought some artwork, I think, that I wanted Coulson to sign. I'm just going to call Clark Gregg Coulson.
Sure.
I'm sure he gets it all the time.
All the time.
But yeah, so I wanted to get, and that was my first
Coulson!
experience. Yeah, son of Cole. That was my first time in a line like that was just crazed. And
Yeah.
I parked myself in that line and was there for
3 hours?
Felt like a day.
I feel like you were there at least half a day, 3 hours.
3 hours before you texted me to come running for a photo op.
Yes.
So we're standing in line, and people had been leaving line to go and get photos or jump into another line or do whatever, and we'd save each other's spaces. You know, we didn't know each other's names.
Yeah.
But we're like, oh yeah, we'll save Hat Guy's place in line. You know, and
yeah.
You know,
And that's really the beauty of
Pikachu,
fandom, too.
Yeah, hit the bathroom. We got your spot. You know,
Yeah.
and we'd do that. And so that was really cool. It was a cool experience.
People were very kind.
So Heidi texts me that she's got a photo op with Captain Jack, and if I get over there quickly,
Right now.
yeah, right now.
Right now.
And luckily, the photo booth, the photo place, it's not a booth, but it was a room.
It was a room kind of built with like little dividers.
Yeah, but it was literally like I could cross behind a fabric wall and then jump into that line with you.
I feel like it
really
was like 20 feet away.
Yeah, it wasn't far. And so I asked people, can you hold my spot? I've got this chance to go. We're going to keep calling him Captain Jack, aren't we?
John Barrowman.
John Barrowman, yeah.
Yeah.
So
sorry, I have another word for him, but it's okay.
So I jump over into the line with Heidi, and by that point you were only like 5 or 6 people away.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I needed to get there quick.
Yeah, you did. Yeah. Right now.
And so we jumped in, and we just died laughing at him taking a photo with the person in front of us.
Oh.
That was hilarious.
Yeah, no,
because he'll pretty much do anything you ask him to do for a photo at those things.
As long as you're over 18.
As long as you're over 18. And so the girl proved to him that she was over 18, and she got quite the photo with him. And
I don't remember, but yeah, it was quite the photo.
Yeah, and then we went in and got our picture taken with him, which was really fun. So then I run from that immediately to go and get my place back in line. And I get back over there, and I don't know where you went from there because you had other doctors to see. And I ran straight over to get back in the line to get Clark Gregg's autograph, and there was no line.
It was gone.
It was gone. It was like
gone.
The whole section of that con was just gone. And I was like, what happened? And so I start wandering around trying to find out what happened. And he's not there.
Coulson.
And I knew that he had a photo op coming, and I knew that lunch was coming and stuff like that. So I knew they'd take a break and he'd walk away, but I didn't expect the line to be gone. And so I go back, and this guy's, and by this point I have to say, so after 3 hours of standing in this line, I'm only like 35 people away or 40 people away when I left to go join Heidi.
Only.
New. And so I come back, and there's a guy handing out tickets, and he's like, were you here for the Clark Gregg line? I said, yeah, I was. And he was like, well, here, I can give you a ticket. He said, I started handing out tickets. He said, they're all numbered, though, so when you come back, you got to get in line with the ticket. And I'm like, what number are you on? And he's like, I've got and it was like 240 or something ridiculous. So I'm just like, oh, no. And somebody taps me on the shoulder, and it's the woman that I was standing next to in line, and she got me a ticket.
How kind.
She got me a ticket with her. She said, my friend stepped away. I need a ticket for him, too. And she got it. Didn't even know my name. Don't know her name.
But that's fandom.
But that was super awesome. So it was an awesome fandom moment.
Yeah, that's fandom.
I got my Clark Gregg signature. Poor man saw so many people that day.
Yeah.
He literally could just shake a hand.
And then
now, of course, now it would be a fist bump because nobody would shake a hand. He shook my hand, said, hey, thanks for coming out, and then signed my thing, and then I was gone. It was literally that. And he had to do that because he had so many people waiting on. Elizabeth Henstridge, on the other hand, who I got first, actually, I think, she was so sweet, and she was talking to the people in front of me about where to get good Mexican food in Houston. And I was like, I'm not from Houston. I can't tell you anything about that. And she was like, hey, it's good to meet you. And she shook my hand and everything. And I told her my name. Oh. And she was like, oh, we work with it, Jeff. And I was like, Jeff Loeb, I know. He's a great comic book writer. And she was like, oh, you know, Jeff, he's the sweetest man. And she just, and she was just as sweet and lovely as she could be. It was a great interaction. And she had quite a few people waiting to see her, too. But she took, she wasn't overwhelmed. So she got to take a little more time. So that was really cool. And then I caught up with you, and you had made the rounds of several doctors.
Yes.
I think we ended up getting all 4 that day.
I did.
And you've gotten some since then.
I have.
And then not long after that, you were volunteering at that one in Dallas.
Yes.
And I went and spent my day. So my thing that day, because I hadn't really done the Doctor Who stuff in Houston, but in Dallas, Karen Gillan was going to be there.
Yep.
And Billy
Piper
was going to be there, and Sylvester McCoy was going to be there,
Oh,
and there were quite a few people. And so we had already booked a photo op with Karen Gillan.
Yes.
And so I knew I was going to get to meet her at some point, but we were still trying to get autographs too.
Yes.
And so I plopped myself down. I was going to go get into Karen Gillan's line. It was crazy.
Yes.
Billy Piper's line was crazy as well, but it was
less.
It was a smidge less, and I could get in the kind of the tail end of that, and I think get through hopefully before she went to lunch. But before I did that, I turned, and Sylvester McCoy's line had nobody in it, and I think, and I don't say that, that's not an insult to him. I think it's that so many people, especially here in the States,
are so used to the new Who.
So used to New Who and the new Doctors that was getting all the attention. And Sylvester was over there, and there were 2 boys talking to him at the time. Couldn't have been more than 12. And one of them was dressed like his doctor.
Aww.
And he was so involved in conversation with those 2 and talking about the boy's outfit and talking about, he was so, like, he acted as though he had stood in line to see them.
Yeah.
And he was so into that conversation. I just remember thinking, what a gracious, kind man he is.
Yeah.
And so I was almost, like he had such a good interaction with them. And I mean, I can't name an episode with the 7th Doctor.
No.
I primarily know him from the Hobbit films. I know he was the Doctor, and I know him from the movie with the 8th Doctor and his brief appearance in that.
Oh, yeah, where he got killed.
But I don't have a
Spoilers.
big history with the 7th Doctor. But as an actor and as a person, I think he's a hoot. And so I just wanted to meet him. And so I go up, and I had the art that I was going to have everybody else sign.
Oh, that's right.
And it's just a square of the TARDIS.
Yes.
And so they got done, and he was still talking to the boys, and the woman helping him at the table said, did you want a photo? And I said, could I have him sign this instead? And she said, oh, absolutely. And so I did that. And he wasn't charging much for anything.
I don't think so.
And so I paid whatever it was, and I went down, and he shook my hand, just as sweet as he could be. Like if I could have sat down and had a cup of tea, and just listened to him talk, I would have done that for hours.
Yeah.
And but he was so sweet, and I said, would you mind signing this for me? I'm trying to get as many signatures, as I can. And he said, do you mind if I draw on it?
No.
And I'm like, no. Why would I mind that?
Original Sylvester McCoy.
And so he drew himself as the Doctor peeking out of the window
of the
TARDIS with his little umbrella handle coming up alongside him as he peeks out. And then he wrote Sylvester McCoy was here.
So cute.
And I just, that was one of those interactions as a fan that even though I'm not a fan of his Doctor per se, I'm such a fan of him.
Yeah,
as a person.
Yeah, he's so charming and so kind.
Just an amazing person. And then you ran past his table with our son.
I did the next day.
And you just happened to catch him, and he gave you stuff, didn't charge you. He
just signed it and gave it to us. It was amazing.
Yeah, just super sweet man. And so, but after I was done with him, I walked away from that, and I was like, oh, I got to jump in Billy's line and get through. And I got there, and you took your break. This is where things went awry.
Yeah, I was trying to make sure that we had the right cash amount for everything, and somehow we just.
And so you came by and said, "Well, I can use my employee privileges and jump the line."
Yeah, so just shout out to that. Like, if you're a convention volunteer, you can get a couple, depending on the convention, of course, you can get a couple of perks. You can get, convention exclusives at the convention store, which is where I work.
This is a fan expo con.
This is a fan expo con. So, so different things for different cons.
And, of course, now, who knows?
Who knows? But that was one of those things, is you could get a couple of line jumps for an autograph if you wanted them. And, they would allow you to make sure that you would get something. You wouldn't have to necessarily wait the whole time, especially if you were volunteering that day or whatever it was. But you got line jumps,
right?
but not unlimited.
And so I was already in line for Billy Piper, and you came by and said, "Do you want me to go ahead and get Karen Gillan's autograph while I'm on break? Because I can jump that line." And I thought, well, yeah, because I'm going to get to meet her anyway because we're going to do the picture, but we're not going to get her to sign anything there. So if you can jump the line. So, but I need the picture back for Billy to sign. And so I gave you the thing to have her sign.
And then I had to.
And you took it over. And then you brought it back. And I realized I'm in this line. It's moving rapidly, too. And I realized that suddenly, because I've given Heidi the cash to go and get Karen's autograph, I don't have the cash for Billy's autograph. But I'm already in this line.
Uh-oh.
And it's moving. And so Heidi's like, okay, I'll go get cash. So she gives me back the artwork. And she runs to go get cash. Well, if you've ever been to a con.
Just bring your own cash.
You know.
Don't even try.
That the ATM at a con is going to be about 35 people deep.
At least.
At its slow moment.
Yeah.
And that you're going to be waiting there. So I'm in this line sweating bullets. And Heidi's texting me, I'm number 33.
Oh my gosh,
and I'm like, and I'm, and Billy's going through people like Kleenex. I mean, she's being so sweet and everybody's getting their moment. But probably because I was so nervous about it, it felt like she was speeding through everybody.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh no, oh no, oh no. So I get about 14 people away. And
just 14.
And I lean over to the woman working that line for the convention. And I said, I hate to do this. I said, but my wife is a volunteer here. She's working here today. And she skipped that line to go get some, but she took my cash when she did, and she's trying to bring me cash. And so I explained the whole ridiculous scenario.
It was a terrible scenario.
And she's like, well, is she going to bring you cash? I said, she is, but I don't know how long it's going to take. There's a line. And she said, well, you don't have much time because Billy's going to be leaving for lunch. And she doesn't know if she's coming back after that because she's got photos and this and that. And she hasn't decided yet. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't know what to do. And she said, I said, I don't want to get out of line, but I also don't want to hold up the people behind me and have them miss her, you know? And she said, well, stand here with me and, to the side of the line. We'll let everybody else go. And hopefully your wife will be back by the time the rest of the line's gone. Well, there were still plenty of people behind me.
Sure.
So I get out of line and I stand there with her. And I keep texting Heidi, and Heidi's like, there's 20 people in front of me. I'm like, oh, no.
No, there's 18. Oh, no, there's a problem with the machine.
Yeah, the machine is broken and spewing flames. It's like one thing after another.
Giant dragon came down and stepped on it.
Yeah,
I don't know.
So we get down to like 5 people. And the woman next to me, she says, well, is your wife coming? I said, she says, there's like 12 people in front. And she said, how much are you short? I said, I'm short $15. And she said, and your wife's working here? I said, yeah. And she said, if I support you, if I loan you the 15, you make sure I get it back? I said, I will not leave this spot until you get it back. Like, not only will I make sure you get it back, like, I will stand right here if you want me to. And she's like, okay. So she goes to find her purse, which is back behind the curtain where Billy's sitting. And as she does that, Billy finishes with the last person. And I'm just like I said, sweating bullets. I'm just like, oh, man, this day. And and as she's coming out with her purse, the people on either side of Billy have stood up, and they're gathering their things. Billy stood up and has taken her purse, her bag, and gathering up her things, picked up her water bottle, and she's turned, and the other 2 people have opened the curtain for her to walk back behind the table. And the woman who grabbed her purse for me, she says, Billy, I'm sorry, we had one more. Is it okay? And she goes, oh, of course it's okay. And she sat right back down in that chair. And I don't know how I apologized. It was probably like verbal diarrhea. I was so
likely.
I was so sorry that I kept her waiting, and so sorry that I had to borrow $15 from somebody I didn't know. But she was like, oh, darling, don't worry about it. And she just signed, and she was so sweet. She made the whole thing seem like it was okay. I made sure the lady got her money back.
Yes, because I think I came bounding up maybe like 2 minutes later.
Right. So we made sure she got her money back. And I was so thankful to her. I was like, listen, you didn't have to do, I appreciate that. I did not, I was desperate to get that signature, but I did not want to keep her waiting, and I didn't want to mess up your day or anything. She was so sweet about the whole thing. And so
that's the bright side of fandom. I mean, there are so many people who understand, being in that situation, and like just fans looking out for fans, and it's so lovely when that can happen. Really is.
Right. And most of my con experiences have been really good, and I know other people that have had some fantastic ones.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I've gotten to work at one con, but it wasn't for the side. It wasn't on the side of the con. I wasn't working for the con. But I get to sell books at a con.
That's
in
right.
Oklahoma
I
City.
forgot about that. Yeah.
And a buddy of mine offered to share a table with me. He said, "Bring your books. You can sell them. I'm going to be selling my artwork." And so, the aforementioned Jason Webb invited me to share his table, and I went up to sell books, and it was such a fun day because I was surrounded by people enjoying their fandom, whatever it was. There's plenty of Harry Potter, plenty of superheroes, plenty of everything. I was not in the authors section. So nobody was looking for books where I was at all. Everybody was looking for artwork. But that's okay. I had a good time with my friends, sold a few things, talked to some interesting people.
Very interesting.
But that's
I wasn't there, but I was told it was very interesting.
But that's the other side of, that. Like you have to know that when you're talking about people that are fanatics, which is where that word comes from.
Fan.
Yeah. That when you're dealing with fanatics, you're going to run into weird.
Oh, yeah.
Whether it's just people that are overly exuberant about being there and some of the chaos that comes from that, or, the weapon checks where people are having to have their props taped up and,
peace bonded.
Right. And all that stuff so that everybody knows that they're not real.
Yes.
And all of that. Or, I remember trying to take photos. This was happened at the Dallas Con, I believe. I tried to take photos of someone in My Little Pony get up because our daughter loved that at the time. Big fan, still does, I'm sure. But,
she still does.
But two women were dressed up as ponies, and I could see that from behind. And so I went to go ask them if I could take a picture of my daughter. And when they turned around, they were like nightmare versions of
they were like
zombified.
Yeah. Zombie ponies.
Like, I cannot show that to my daughter.
No, but let's go ahead and just take a picture. Hey, make y'all feel good.
Right.
And that's the thing. Like, I actually really, really love the whole cosplay aspect of it. Like, it's really interesting to see people's creativity coming out. Really interesting to see people's talent as far as putting together really great costumes, like to emulate their favorite characters or characters they feel like they can look like or look up to. And then like the creativity. So like you got the zombie ponies, and like I've seen. I'm part of a Facebook group right now, and people were posting their cosplays, and there was like a group of African American gentlemen who were dressed as the Sailor Moon and all the Sailor planets, but they were dressed in DC uniform style things. So it was like Sailor Wonder Woman and Sailor Superman. Cool. It was like a great mashup of all of them, and I thought it was a fantastic thing. So people have just really come out with the creativity. So the day that we did go as a family, I cosplayed as the Third Doctor. It was my one and only cosplay, which I love doing, and it was really fun. We
got a picture of you in a TARDIS, too, that day, I believe.
We did, and it was so much fun to have people recognize that I was trying to be the Third Doctor, so that was kind of neat.
I remember that Karen Gillan did fist bumps, because you had told me that. She didn't shake hands.
She did not shake hands. She did fist bumps.
And so, as we went in for the photo op with her, I was the first one through the things. I raised my fist for a fist bump. And she gave me a good one, but she was wearing a massive ring that hurt like Hades. But that was okay. I was so excited that we were there. And our picture is so awkward because my daughter is like sliding out of one arm.
And I think I was holding her son.
And yeah.
And I was the Third Doctor, and I was holding him. He was like, he's sort of like 1/3 of the way facing the camera.
And she is so tall.
She is extraordinarily tall.
I'm not sure which of us was more awkward, but I think we all were, and I think we got her there too.
Yeah, we were an incredibly awkward family photo.
That's right.
Yes,
but for me, the awkward stuff for me at that con trying to sell was my interactions with customers, not the con itself. So the con itself, like. I think Lou Ferrigno was there, and Ray Park was there, and all those guys are so kind to their friends. There were some wrestlers there.
Nice.
Hacksaw Jim Duggan was there, and he was so friendly to everybody. My friend's got a great picture of Hacksaw choking him. which is fantastic. So
he loved that.
And
I'm sure.
he was, and Hacksaw loved it. Like he was eating it up and having his wife take photos of people, and he wasn't even charging people for that stuff. He was taking their phones and taking pictures.
That's fantastic.
And doing all that stuff. So yeah, it was lots of great interactions. But then I had two favorite interactions with people that came to my booth. One was a girl that was not looking to buy anything on my table. But she came up, she was dressed all in green. She had a vine painted up her face. And so I wasn't quite sure what she was supposed to be. And she came up and it was like an in-person AMSR video. She was talking really soft.
Really like this. Oh my God.
And all I got out of anything she said was art. And I said, "Are you looking to buy some art?" And she nodded. And so I had an artist on each side of me. My friend Jason was on one side. Alan Grimes, another great artist. You should look up his stuff. But he also was on my left. And so I said, were you looking for this art or for this art? And she pointed to Alan's stall. And I said, okay, let me. And I'm like, this poor girl, she's not going to get his attention at all because it's so loud. Cons are loud.
They are very loud.
And so I said, Alan, this young lady was wanting to buy something from you. And he said, what were you interested in? And she's, whispering again. And I was like, oh my gosh. And it wasn't until she left that I realized she was a wallflower.
Yeah. That was her cosplay.
That was her cosplay. And she was so committed to her wallflowerness that she almost didn't get anything that she wanted because nobody could hear what she said. And I'm like, that's okay. I get it. But it's also like I'm trying to help you get what you want. Like,
that seems like more like a costume party sort of thing. Like that would be a fun thing for a costume party, but not necessarily.
I mean, maybe it comes from a book or something that I'm not aware of, or something, or an anime or something. I'm old. I don't know everything.
No. What?
Yeah. But and then the other great interaction was someone who was asking me about my books, and she had to have been, I'd say, in her late 50s.
Oh.
Maybe early 60s.
This customer.
And she said. And she's looking at the books and everything. And, of course, I had a little spiel worked up. And
a little elevator speech.
Yeah, and so I'd ask people how they were doing and if they're enjoying the con and everything. And I'd say, was there something you were interested in particular and that kind of thing. And she said, well, what's this story about? And I said, well, that particular one is a short story. It's a horror story. And I said, it's a handmade chapbook that I have. They're limited edition. They're all numbered. And she said, with no change of expression or no anything, she said, well, I'm not allowed to read scary stories. My mama says that they give me nightmares. And in that moment, it's like I'd seen enough stuff throughout the day that I didn't know if I was being played or if she was genuine. And so I just said, well, that one's probably too scary then.
Yeah.
Do you like fantasy? And so I showed her some other things, and she asked a couple of questions about the fantasy, and I showed her at that table I had something exclusive for that con, which was a 2-book set, and I showed her that and all the extra stuff that came in it, and she said she wanted that, and I said, well, let me get you a bag and bag that up for you, and she said, no, my mommy got me bag that I can roll around with me because backpacks are too heavy and I can't carry a lot of books in backpacks. And the thing is, I've worked with people with developmental disabilities. I've done that kind of work. And she didn't strike me as someone with those sorts of factors at play. And so I was really unsure whether it was a gag or whether she was playing a character that I was unfamiliar with or what was happening. And so all I could do in the moment was just go with it and say, well, that sounds great. I'm glad your mom doesn't want your back hurt. That wouldn't be good, and I just went with it. And I still don't know. And it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And because as long as she was having a good time at the con. And my favorite thing that wasn't really connected to me at all, but at that con, there was someone dressed as Severus Snape who just went around insulting people. That was literally his only... People would stop him and say things to him or ask him things, and he stayed in character every minute of that con.
That had to be so enjoyable.
And I'm like, what a fun way to spend the con where it's expected that you insult people.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is just use your wit to
just
throw barbs at people.
Be the character.
Yeah.
That was fantastic.
And you have free reign to do it because everybody's expecting you to do it.
Yeah.
I saw that. I saw
really particular cosplay.
A really particular cosplay of which was someone walked by in a Fantastic Four costume with a paper bag on their head, bare feet, bare hands, and a kick me sign on their back. And as he walked by, I was like, "Hey, Spidey!" And he waved at me, and my friend was like, "Was that supposed to be Spider-Man?"
Yes.
Said, it's a very particular Spider-Man from one episode,
Yeah.
or from one particular issue, where Johnny Storm put a kick me sign on his back after he had to borrow a costume from them, and they don't wear masks, so he had to put a paper bag on his head.
That was fantastic.
And I was like, "That's great. If you're going to cosplay, go specific.
Yeah,
go,
be very creative.
Make people guess.
Yeah, be super creative like that." And I loved, like I said, I love all the creativity in cosplay and how people put together just everything that they do with it. So, like, I met a girl who was Applejack from My Little Pony, and she, I mean, not gung ho, but she had the hat and the outfit, and she was just Applejack. So it was great.
And at those cons, you find a lot of indie artists who aren't necessarily working on comics or whatever. Although you find that too, and that's a lot of fun. I always love checking out the artist booths
oh yeah, lots of great stuff at those artist booths.
But lots of indie writers too, sci-fi and fantasy, and sorry, I lost my thought and a burp. I just was like trying not to burp into the microphone.
Oh.
No, you see a lot of that, and so because I'm not as aware of some things, I always pick stuff up and look at read the back of it or whatever. And I've bought artwork from people that were not big names in the comic book community or anything else, but I bought some work that I really love at those cons because that's where you can get it. And it's like I see stuff that I'm like, man, I'll never see that anywhere else.
Yeah, it's a really great way to support local. I mean, if you're really interested in being a part of your community and supporting local artists and writers and that sort of thing, that's a con is a great way to do it.
And that's kind of why our YouTube channel and this podcast are so centered into pop culture-y things, because it's really just us. It's really kind of part of the building blocks that makes us us. And we have been involved in those sort of things for a long time. And, whether it's a deep dive into a fandom like we were with Buffy or on the fringes of something, Heidi didn't grow up reading comics like I did, but she's seen all the MCU movies and is on board. And I tell her stuff, and we... you grew up watching the cartoons and those kinds of things. So there was already a working knowledge. You're just coming at it from a different angle than I was. And that's, so when we go to these things, it's new worlds everywhere, from crafts and cosplay to artwork and comics. And, you can find all kinds. Funko Pops.
Oh my gosh.
It's a world of Funko Pops out there.
It is a total world of Funko Pops.
It's a dangerous place for a guy like me.
Yeah, especially like a lot of them are just so it just seems so affordable. It's like $8 or $9 and whatever.
Well, because they always have a deal.
They always have a deal. You get 3 for $3
for $20 or something like that. Yeah.
And
4 for 20, whatever.
Something. And let me say, I don't have a running count of how many Funkos, but when we moved, we're like, we are not buying any more of these. How many are in our apartment right now?
I'm not answering that question. I'm pleading the fifth.
Yeah, exactly.
But you bought me some of them.
I did. Yeah. I did buy you some of them.
I'm not taking all the flack for that.
No. But that's the thing. Is like we have so many fandom things that we love and we love to support and we would love to display better, but we need a better room for that.
But here's the thing on fandom is that no matter what corner of it you're coming from, whether you're a Star Wars fan, whether you're Battlestar Galactica, Sliders, whatever.
Star Trek.
Yeah.
VR5.
Oh,
whatever. VR5. Man, I miss that show.
There's your Anthony Stewart Head connection.
It really is. It really, really was.
Which I got to meet him too.
Yeah.
Shelby and I both did.
Oh, that's right. And Bruce Campbell. We met him separate places at separate times. Even.
That's right.
That was pretty amazing. He was signing. What was he signing? If This Chin Could Talk.
Right.
That was way back
Chins
when.
Could Kill.
Back in whatever it was the big Barnes & Noble in Union Square in New York City, and I got his autograph on that book for Jeff.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. That was before you were a Texan.
That was before I was a Texan. I think I can qualify now. I've been here
I believe he signed that book, Jeff, Where the Hell Were You?
I think you're right.
Like I think you're
right.
Bruce Campbell.
Yeah.
And then I met him when his second book came out, and he which is How to Make Love the Bruce Campbell Way, I believe, is what that book is called.
I love his books. They're great. They're great titles and just really fun books.
Yeah, and so I went to a Barnes & Noble somewhere in Dallas. I don't remember which location, and took my oldest child with me, Shelby, and we stood in line. The line went upstairs and around stacks of books. It was like this windy line that they had.
Windy line.
And we got up there, and by this point, he was already on burn notice, and so he was dressed.
Love that show.
He was dressed very much like Sam Axe that day.
I feel like that he just walked in off the street onto the set wearing his normal clothes that way.
Except that we weren't in Miami.
No,
but he walked up, and then what they told you had to put your name, whatever you wanted it signed to, you had to put it on a Post-it. And stick it on the front of the book so that he knew how to spell it and to do that without it taking a lot of time and having to go through 2 or 3 people's hands. And so it just said, I wrote Jeff and Shelby because I wanted her to be included since she was with me. And so I wrote Jeff and Shelby. And we got up there, and of course, by that point, she was old enough to know who he was, and she'd seen movies. And I think I'd subjected her to Evil Dead and those kinds of things.
Really?
Yeah.
I feel like she might have been young for that.
I don't think so.
Okay.
But we walked up and he looked. We slid the book in front of me, looked at the book, and he looked up at us and looked back down at the book, and he looked at her and he said, "I'm guessing you're Jeff." And she just kind of grinned at him. And he looked up at me and said, "And Shelby."
Yes.
It's weird. Okay. And he signed it for us and everything. And just sweet guy, cool guy. But yeah, we've had those kinds of interaction. But the thing is, no matter where we've delved into fandom, there's always stuff we don't know.
Yeah.
And especially as our kids grow, we find they get into things and it's like, I've never heard of this thing. And yet then I look and it's like the biggest thing ever in, between 10 to 12-year-olds or something. And it's like, oh, okay, I've never heard of this. I didn't know this was a thing.
Yep.
And then Heidi recently has gotten into a weird little corner of Instagram where she gets ads for sci-fi or fantasy books that
they're wild.
They're probably indie writers like myself, trying to get their work out there.
Yeah, a lot of
but some of the approaches to those ads are very funny, and it could almost be a fandom in and of itself. Like I'm a fan of those ads. Those ads are hilarious.
Big fan. I have subjected my coworkers to me doing dramatic readings of these ads, and so like for anyone who has watched or listened to us, I used to work in advertising, and I still love it to this day. I will critique any commercial that you put in front of me, print ad, whatever. I love all of them. I love looking at them, just kind of knowing what goes into them. But sometimes the copy, like the writing, is
cut and paste from one ad to another.
Cut and paste for sure, but also just subpar. And so you kind of wonder where it's coming from, who wrote it. So it's like, she is a Selkie, descended from the Selkie princes of...
I had to ask what a Selkie was.
Yeah, I didn't know what it was either until I started looking at these ads. But yeah, it's like, this girl, it's always like a girl who didn't...
She was a bit sulky.
Right? It's always about some girl who didn't know that she had some hidden background, like a half angel or like, a fae, but she doesn't have any magic.
He was a demon hunter from Mars.
Yeah, he was a demon hunter from Mars. Could they make it work, and could they run from the trouble that they've gotten into, or whatever? Like there's always like a girl who didn't know what her magical background was, a broody guy or set of guys who all want to be with her, but maybe don't because it's enemies to lovers, that sort of thing. And then there's always some big like over huge like doom that's kind of bearing down on them that they have to like work through while they're working out their relationship with each other. And it's like, she was the last werewolf in Scotland. He was the hunter of every werewolf in Europe, but somehow they have to get together and
they co-owned a bakery in Switzerland.
Yeah, something. Or no, they
could they make it work?
Could they make it work with their adopted Selkie? I mean, there's
a lot of Selkies in these.
I'm actually pulling that out.
Right.
That was like maybe 2 ads that had Selkies in them.
But
it's always like a girl who didn't know she was half fae or half angel or half something or whatever.
Rogue demon hunter.
Something, and then they have to like beat this doom and trouble, and it's just so interesting. And I love.
But here's the thing, though.
Love that stuff.
Yeah, you see that stuff, and we we laugh at it not because there's anything wrong with people writing what they want to write.
Sure, no,
or people who love to read it.
Yeah, there's a big market for this, apparently.
It's just finding something new that we didn't know there was a market for that seems so far removed from things
it seems
we like.
So specific. But
Very specific,
there was like I think there was a stretch of time where I was tormenting a coworker with these ads because it was like they were doing testing for it, you know. And so, like, if you've ever worked in advertising, you know that you test to see, you know, if people respond to a certain type of ad versus another. And so I would see the same copy on different, Photoshop images. And so
it would be very similar.
Oh, it was the same exact copy. It was like, she...
Well, no, I mean the images would be.
Oh,
like there'd be a pregnant woman, but there'd be different pregnant women.
Different pregnant woman, same torso of a guy. Like, you didn't even care who the guy was. It was just, he was just a torso.
Just a torso with some sort of, like, tattoo on one,
Yeah, he was just a torso. But it was like, one of them had, like, this, like, really cute pregnant girl. Like, of course, it was, like, a cartoon, so whatever. But, like, she was, like, kind of grinning and whatever. And it was like, oh, haha, I'm pregnant. Or whatever, like, the kind of look. And then, like, another one had the exact same copy, exact same male torso. And then it had this, like, an actual real photograph of, like, a woman, like, looking like she was throwing up, but pregnant. And I'm just like, which
Their
one?
love affair broke all the rules. He loved chocolate. She loved peanut butter. It's like...
But so they were trying to see which ad with the same copy and the same torso, but the different pregnant woman, like the cute one or the throwing up one. I'm like...
Which one gets us more click-throughs?
Right. And it's like, I really don't want to read a book about somebody throwing up. I'm sorry. If I'm going to take your copy for what and your imaging for what it's worth, then that's going to be something that I'm going to have a hard no.
Right.
So...
But the thing is, and to kind of wrap this all up, we say a lot when we're doing reactions to TV shows that, there are characters that maybe we're not drawn to, but that character is somebody's favorite character.
Oh, for sure.
And I think that's true of fandoms and things, like all of the things that fans love that we gravitate to. Different fandoms, different followings, everybody has their thing that they're into.
Even throwing up girls.
Even throwing up girls, even selkies, and, and even sulking selkies.
And the Gen Canucks.
Right. Oh, boy.
That was a new one for me, too. I didn't know what a Gen Canuck was before, and I didn't even know how to pronounce it right.
That's just somebody from Canada, right?
No, it's not. No, it's not a gang Canuck. Good gravy boats. Now we're going to get the Canadians.
A gang of Canucks.
Yeah, we're going to get the Canadians politely trying to beat us.
That's right. But no, that to me is kind of the magic of fandom, is that you can be a part of something that you feel like nobody else is into. And then you can go to a con or something and find out that there's like a lot of you.
A whole bunch of people that you can just commune with.
Sure. And you don't even have to go to a con for that. There's places online for that, and just, things, especially in this day and age, because of the technology we have, they take on their own life, outside the realm, whether you're talking fan fiction or fan-made movies or...
Oh, my gosh.
I mean, how many of those have we seen for Star Wars?
We've seen some really good ones.
Right.
Like, they may have been like a final exam for, like, somebody's class, but they were really good.
Right. And so there are so many ways that people can jump into a fandom and really kind of own it in their own way and feel attached to both what they love as far as the show or the book or the, game or the anime or whatever, and yet also to a community of other people who love that. Now, they may not agree about every single thing, but they agree that they love that thing.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's a really sweet feeling. I was in line with a bunch of people that loved Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and that's all they cared about, and they saved me a ticket.
That was so kind.
And, so that's really it. So this is just kind of our way of filling you in on who we are as geeks and nerds and...
sci-fi-ish thing, fantasy.
Yeah, some of the weird fandom things that have contributed to the weirdness that is us and why we like to talk about these things. So whether we're talking about comics or movies or TV or whatever we're into at the moment, whatever we pick as a subject for our next podcast, who knows? But
Gan Canucks.
We're not doing that. I'm putting my foot down.
You're putting
my hoof. I'm putting my hoof down. Is that it? Wait, do Gunkanaks have hooks?
No, they don't have
Hoofs?
They don't have
Hooves?
hooves. They don't have
Hoofs
hooves.
or hooks? What do they have?
They have neither. No,
They have
they
neither.
have wings. Actually, I think.
Oh, okay.
I think they're fairies, vampire fairies. I think that have roofie skin.
So Edward. Anyway, that's it for us for this time. We'll be back next time with Pop Culture. Until next time, folks.
Bye.
Bye.